12 years. That's how long Judith and I had been married. You'd think, after that long, you'd know when something was off, but the truth is, sometimes you only see the cracks when the whole wall comes down. She still planned our anniversary. Every year said it was her thing, just dress sharp and show up hungry. She told me this time, smiling across the kitchen counter. It was the most affection she had shown me in weeks. Taught to be fair, things had been drifting between us for a while. Fewer conversations, more silence at the dinner table. Her phone seemed permanently attached to her hand, like it had more to say than I ever could. She started working part-time at a boutique, taking yoga classes, spending more time with her best friend Jasmine. I told myself it was normal. People go through phases. Life gets busy. Maybe this was just our rut. And when she started acting upbeat again, humming in the car, tapping her fingers on the countertop, I thought she was trying. That maybe we were finally turning the corner. I gave her the benefit of the doubt. That's what you do after 12 years. You choose to believe the best, even when your gut tells you something else. Looking back, there were signs, a different kind of distance. Her laughter felt rehearsed, her touch mechanical. But I ignored it, because sometimes pretending is easier than accepting what's slipping through your fingers. She told me she had the anniversary all figured out. Don't worry about a thing, she said. Just be ready by 7. I should have known, but I didn't. I didn't know if I was heading to a celebration or a performance. You think an anniversary dinner is supposed to be the highlight of a marriage, a moment to remember why you started. But what if it's the moment you realize everything's already over? Have you ever been in a relationship where all the signs were there, but you chose not to see them? Leave a comment and say, I have, if you've ever felt that too. We drove downtown that evening, the city lights flickering across the windshield. Judith was humming softly, tapping her fingers on the dashboard like a teenager heading to prom. She looked excited, radiant even. I hadn't seen her this animated in months. I asked her what restaurant she had picked. She just smiled and said, you'll see, it's memorable. The place was stunning. One of those rooftop spots with glass walls, skyline views, and soft piano music playing somewhere in the background. Everything about it screamed elegance. Judith wore a long navy dress that caught the light with every movement. I had on my blazer, suddenly aware of how long it had been since we dressed up for each other. We were seated by the windows. Judith ordered wine before I could open the menu. Her smile didn't fade, but beneath it, there was something else. Not joy, not love, something more expectant, like she was waiting for the curtain to rise on some performance only she knew about. I looked at her for a moment and said, you're acting strange. Did you invite someone? She didn't answer directly, just shrugged and tapped her phone. You'll see, she said again, eyes flicking toward the entrance. For a split second, I thought she meant Jasmine. Maybe it was some kind of surprise dinner with friends. An anniversary twist. Then he walked in. Tall, mid-30s, maybe, tan blazer jeans, too tight for a place like this. Confident, deliberate stride. He looked like he belonged, or at least, like he wanted everyone to think so. Judith stood up. She didn't just wave, she lit up. She beamed like a celebrity had entered the room. My stomach turned before my brain caught up. Albert, she said, turning toward me. This is Peter. He's important to me. Peter extended his hand. I didn't move. What's going on? I asked. My voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp, controlled. Judith sat down again, and Peter slid into the empty seat the waiter had left beside her. I didn't want to lie to you anymore, she said. Her voice was calm, rehearsed. We've been drifting. I've met Peter 4 months ago. He makes me feel alive. Seeing I wanted you to meet him like adults. I stared at her, then at him. Peter glanced at the wine menu, pretending this was normal, like this wasn't a bomb dropped in the middle of dinner. You brought your boyfriend, I said, to our anniversary. Judith straightened her posture. I thought you deserved honesty. I nodded slowly. That's not honesty. That's theater. Peter smirked as if he had won something. I signaled for the check, paid in cash, and folded my napkin with deliberate care. I stood. No drama, no shouting, just a quiet clarity. Thanks for clearing things up, I said. Judith blinked, caught off guard. Maybe she expected a scene. Instead, I just walked away. I didn't look back. Not when she called my name. Not when Peter laughed under his breath. I stepped into the elevator, pressed the button for the ground floor, and let everything go still. This wasn't the truth. It was a performance, and I was done playing a part. She never came home that night. No calls, no texts. I assumed she stayed with Peter. Maybe that had been the plan all along. The house was quiet when I got back. Her things were still in place, her perfume still faint in the hallway. But I didn't go to the bedroom. I slept in the guest room, lights off, door shut. I didn't want to share a bed with a memory. The next morning, I called Marissa Han. That we had worked together once before on a property deal. She was sharp, quiet, efficient, the kind of person who didn't waste time on unnecessary questions. When I told her I needed divorce papers, she asked only one thing: were there kids involved? There weren't, just 2 people who had once made plans, now living on opposite sides of a truth neither could ignore. By Wednesday, the papers were filed. Judith didn't call, but she started texting. Long messages, short ones, questions, accusations, please. The first came 2 days after that dinner. Can we talk like grown-ups? She wrote, I don't understand why you're being so cold. I didn't answer. The next day, this doesn't have to be ugly. We can figure this out. I just want to talk. Still, I said nothing. Not out of cruelty, but because there was nothing left to say. On the fourth day, the tone shifted. You emotionally checked out years ago, she wrote. You stopped seeing me. I had to do what I needed to feel loved. Then came the guilt trip. You should have fought for us instead of walking away. That one sat on my phone screen a little longer. She thought bringing her boyfriend to an anniversary dinner was a conversation starter. I spent that evening heating up leftover chicken, sitting at the kitchen table alone, her message still open. The napkin beside me was folded neatly, the way I always did when we used to eat together. Some habits stay even when the person is gone. I chewed slowly, read through her words again, and then deleted them. I didn't need explanations. I needed closure. The next week, she showed up at the door. It was a Tuesday. I was sorting mail when I heard the knock. I looked through the peephole. She was standing there in a gray sweater, arms crossed, not crying, just ... waiting like she thought the door might open on its own. She still had a key, but she knocked. I opened the door halfway, enough to see her, not enough to let her in. Albert, she said quietly, please, can we just talk? I didn't move. I didn't mean for it to go like that. She tried again. I just wanted you to understand. I leaned against the frame, arms crossed. You made your choice at that table, Judith, I said. Now you live with it. She stood there for a moment, then turned and walked away. That night, I sat at the same kitchen table, eating reheated pasta, reading a letter that had come certified from her lawyer. It claimed she was owed spousal support, claimed emotional distress, claimed she gave up career opportunities to support my life. I didn't even finish the meal. I called Marissa again. She said, let them dream. We'll handle it. And I believed her. Because I wasn't interested in revenge. I was interested in peace. It was late, nearly midnight, when my phone buzzed with a call from an unfamiliar number. I let it ring. Whoever it was could leave a message. A minute later they did. That it was Jasmine. Her voice was low, cautious. Albert, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need to tell you something about Peter. It's important. I replayed the message twice before deciding to call her back the next morning. We met at a quiet coffee shop near the edge of town. Jasmine looked different, not the confident, outspoken friend I remembered. She seemed nervous, guarded, like someone carrying a weight they weren't sure they had the right to share. I shouldn't be doing this, she said, hands wrapped tight around her coffee cup, but I can't stay quiet anymore. What do you know? I asked. She took a breath. Peter isn't who Judith thinks he is. He dated a friend of mine last year, same pattern. He moved fast, said all the right things. Within weeks he was staying over, borrowing money. Then it escalated. He convinced her to open a joint account, said he wanted to build a future. Then he drained it, maxed out her credit, and disappeared. I didn't say anything, just let the word settle. I tried to warn Judith months ago, Jasmine continued. I told her what he did, showed her texts, even a photo. She shut me down, said I was jealous, said I didn't understand him. She believed in the version of him she wanted, I said quietly. Jasmine nodded. He's good at that. He makes you feel seen, needed, but it's all a setup. She reached into her bag and pulled out a printed screenshot. This is from a dating app. Same guy, different name. Peter was smiling in the photo, wearing the same smug expression I remembered from that night at the restaurant. His bio listed a different hometown, a different job, but the eyes were the same. Thank you, I said. Jasmine hesitated. I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. You tried, I replied. She didn't want to hear it. There was nothing left to say. We finished our coffee in silence, but something had shifted. The betrayal no longer felt personal. It felt orchestrated. Peter wasn't just the man who stepped into my marriage. He was a pattern, and Judith had walked straight into it with open eyes. The mediation was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon. We met in a glass-walled conference room, overlooking a quiet stretch of downtown. Judith walked in first, Peter just behind her. She wore a sleek blazer, her hair perfectly styled. He wore sunglasses indoors, like he thought he was walking onto a movie set. They looked polished, prepared, and confident. Marissa and I were already seated. She glanced up from her folder without expression as they entered. I didn't speak. I hadn't come to plead or negotiate. I came to end it. Ronald Miles, Judith's attorney, started the session with a monologue about emotional trauma and sacrifice. He spoke of the years Judith had devoted to our marriage, about her current relationship with Peter, and how it should not be viewed as betrayal but as a search for happiness. He described her as a woman rebuilding after neglect. It was rehearsed like something meant to win sympathy rather than justice. Then, Judith spoke. You never made space for me, she said, looking directly at me. You were married to your work. I was background noise. I didn't respond. I had nothing to prove anymore, Peter added. Judith deserves stability. That house is her home. It's where she built her life. Marissa tapped her pen lightly on the table and opened her folder. Let's begin with the clarification of the timeline, she said calmly. She slid a report across the table. This is a private investigation summary. According to the data, Judith and Mr. Peter began their relationship approximately 9 months ago. Not for, as previously stated. We have hotel records, credit card receipts, and time-stamped photos, all of which contradict the narrative you've presented today. Peter stiffened. Judith looked down. Marissa didn't pause. Furthermore, she continued, we have bank statements showing luxury dinners, spa weekends, and travel expenses all charged to the shared marital account. These expenditures line up exactly with the weekends Mr. Peter and Judith were away together. Peter leaned forward. You had someone follow us. Marissa ignored him and turned a page. Mr. Albert also provided financial support for Judith's online business courses and lease renewals over the past year. Claims that she sacrificed career opportunities do not align with the financial trail. Judith opened her mouth to speak, but Marissa was already placing another sheet on the table, and finally she said, voice still even, we have this email, sent by Judith to a friend dated 2 months prior to the dinner. In it, she writes, I quote that she plans to finally shake Albert out of his shell by showing him what he's missing. That dinner wasn't disclosure, it was humiliation. The room went still. Peter's jaw tightened. Ronald adjusted his tie. Judith stared straight ahead, hands clenched in her lap. After a long silence, the mediator called for a short recess. Peter stood and mumbled something about needing the restroom. He didn't return for 15 minutes. When they came back, the mood had changed. The confidence was gone. Ronald's voice lost its edge. My client is willing to consider a more equitable arrangement, he said. She's open to selling the house and splitting the proceeds. No spousal support. Marissa asked. Judith hesitated, then nodded. We both knew why. The moment the documents were on the table, their leverage vanished. The performance unraveled, and all that remained was a failed script. Then came the final blow. Marissa turned to the financial summary. Judith accrued approximately $5,000 in charges related to her trips with Mr. Peter. As these were not mutually agreed upon marital expenses, we will deduct that amount from her portion of the house equity. Peter spoke for the first time since returning. Are we done here? Judith looked at him, startled by the tone. You said you'd support me, she whispered. He didn't reply. The mediator took final notes. The terms would be drafted the following week. I stood, shook the mediator's hand, and walked out. Judith never said goodbye. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized. The house sold for a decent price, even with the market dipping. After settling the mortgage and subtracting the amount Judith had spent during her affair, we split the remaining equity. I used my share to buy a modest 2-bedroom home just outside the city. It wasn't grand. It wasn't meant to impress anyone. It was quiet, steady. Mine. Judith kept the furniture. That was fine with me. I didn't want the couch we never sat on together, or the dining table that had become a place for silent meals and scrolling phones. I started over with clean walls, empty bookshelves, and no photos on display, just space. Not for anyone else, just for myself. I spent most days fixing things that didn't need fixing. Small repairs around the house, walks through the neighborhood. In the early morning, when everything still felt untouched, there was no rush, no noise, no one to answer to. One evening, while unpacking the last of the moving boxes, I found an old photo album. It was thick, leather-bound, the kind Judith insisted on updating every year. I sat on the couch and flipped through it slowly. There we were, laughing in our first apartment, posing in front of a borrowed tent in Colorado, making pancakes in the kitchen while flour dusted her nose. I kept turning the pages, but there was no sting, no weight. It didn't feel like pain. It felt like watching someone else's life through a window. A life I once stepped into, lived for a time, and then quietly stepped away from. I closed the album and slid it into a storage bin at the back of the closet. Not out of anger, not out of grief, just a quiet sense of being done. Judith lost more than a marriage. She lost the illusion. The man she left me for was already talking to someone new weeks after the mediation. Jasmine had texted me to let me know. I didn't respond. There was no satisfaction in it because this wasn't about winning, it was about letting go. I don't look for anything new these days. I don't need noise or movement to feel alive. I breathe easier in the silence. And for the first time in a long time, I'm not waiting for anything. I'm just here. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever stepped out of a toxic relationship and found peace on the other side, leave a heart in the comments and share your journey. The story, no matter how quiet, can be a part of someone else's healing.